and welcome back to the Don't Make This Weird podcast. I am one of your hosts, Heather, and with me, as always, is Tony. And we have a very special guest tonight. I will let you introduce, but we will also get into the usual. The usual. Hey, there we go. That works.
Let's see if we can get the split screen right. There we go. All right.
Okay, there we go. Gave you a little sneak peek who our guest is tonight, because So.
Tony doesn't know what he's doing, and it's not like 174 episodes in. I'm just like, yeah, we're shitting the bed, yeah.
No. So this is going to be a little bit interesting because I am over in Chris's seat tonight because we had it set up. We were hoping he was going to be here tonight. However,
Chris, why do you hate us?
If you're listening, why do you hate us?
Why do you hate us?
But it all worked out though, because we do have a special guest tonight, and that is awesome. So.
Yes.
How do you want to get into this? Do we want to do the week thing and then introduce, or what do you want to do?
I mean, it's been a pretty fun week.
It has.
Had a ton of audiobooks. Katharine Hepburn was an interesting person through the course of history. And I'm not just talking about like the Howard Hughes part of it.
Right.
Like that girl had moxie. She was at the top of the game for Broadway and all of that other crazy stuff. Like, I don't know if you guys ever watched... what's that? The Howard Hughes movie with Leonardo DiCaprio. You know what I'm talking about?
Great Gatsby?
No.
Oh. I don't know. Like, that's one of my favorite ones.
Wrong 1920s movie.
All right.
The Aviator.
Oh.
Or The Navigator. God, I don't know.
See how good we do?
This is why.
Aviator.
Yeah. Aviator.
There you go.
Thank you.
Thanks.
See? This is why we have guests.
Great Gatsby, Aviator, Naviator, whatever. It's whatever. One of them. Yeah, one of the ones with Leonardo DiCaprio in it. However, I am enjoying all of the different memes with his face in it from Django. Is that what it's called? Did I say that right?
No, it's Django. The D is
Oh,
silent.
whoops. I'm always messing stuff up, but that's all right. That's part of my charm, I think.
I love how you look to me for correct pronunciation.
I know. It's not. It's like,
how do you
help
spell
me
that?
out. How do you spell this? Help me out. So we're both like on our phones and Google. Hey Google, how do you spell?
And when Google,
how do you pronounce this?
When spell check gives up on you and they're just like, nope, I'm done.
Mm-hmm. I'd have to say that happens at least 20 times a week for me. I don't know. I never claimed to be good at spelling or writing, punctuation, I should say.
I'm hoping this is going to work correctly so we can get these links shared out.
Oh, yeah, that's another good thing.
Hey, there we go. Now we got some sound. All right.
Yep, I am catching up with you guys, too. If you're tuning in on YouTube, I'm just talking away and not even paying attention to chat.
We're trained professionals. 174 shows
Thank you guys for jumping in.
And we still haven't figured out how to properly open the show and share links and still be, professionals about all. Because it's like, yep, welcome to the shit show. Hi, I'm Tony. Straight jackets are over there. Crazy straws for green jello is over there.
I always like to say that there's always room for improvement. So, each week I don't purposely pick these things, but this is what happens. And then I'm like, oh, next week I'll have to fix this. And then next week I forget because I have a good memory. Let's talk about that.
What?
Getting older.
I forgot what you were talking about.
Man, I can't even trust you. My dad's joining in. Hello, you two. My biggest fan, my father, is joining in tonight, and so we have to behave a little bit because that's always awkward when he jumps in and I'm just
Wait a minute. Whoa. We have to behave because your dad's listening? He's the one that was talking about being a platinum member.
Oh, stop it.
Over breakfast.
Yeah. It is what it is. So thank you, everybody that's jumping in. I don't know what you got going over there on Twitch, but we're glad to have you guys join us.
Because my phone's not letting me share.
One of the things I'd like to mention, though, as we're getting started here, we're just warming up, guys, so hang around. Stick around. Hang around, see? I want to give a big shout-out to solidstateradio.net. We thank you guys for re-airing us, so you can catch our shows over there on solidstateradio.net, and we also have a couple sponsors as well that we'll talk about.
Speaking of that, I'm working on a full page read for our friends at The Harvest. Shout out to Nikki, Amy, Sam, Shannon. Love you guys. You always.
I'm moving my hand at you.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Hey, I should probably flip the camera on. There we go.
It's awkward.
No, shout out to you guys at The Harvest because you guys are always top shelf. You make the best food. And they were supposed to get me something here in the next couple of weeks.
Nice.
So I can do a full page read because unfortunately today was their last day that they were open due to all of the stuff that's going
Everything
on.
that's going on.
But they are opening back up February 1st. And if you want catering, they said they will be open, but it has to be $100 order minimum.
Okay.
Because, yeah, everybody's struggling. So if you guys want catering, and I did that for New Year's. So if you guys love the food they serve at the Harvest, which I do, I'm a fat kid all day long.
We love to promote the food.
Yeah, you have to try the wraps. Like, they're incredible.
And they are gluten-free, some of them are.
Yes. Actually, you can get gluten-free wrap on all of the wraps. But my favorite is the Porky's BLT because I do the extra crispy bacon, no lettuce because I'm not a rabbit. I do the spring mix with baby spinach.
Different kind of rabbit.
Chunks of cabbage.
The fancy rabbit.
Yes, the fancy rabbit. Yes. And then I do Swiss cheese and chipotle mayo, which I looked at that the first couple of times at Subway, and I'm like, no. Thanks, I'm driving. But they do something different with it at the Harvest. So if you guys like that stuff, and the best part about it for you alcoholics, and I don't even have my Jesus wine. Oh, yeah, I do. Hold on.
Oh, my gosh.
This episode brought to you by Jesus Wine.
Oh, my gosh.
But yeah, they have wine, beer, and I think they've got whiskey and bourbon and stuff there too.
Oh, okay.
Which is great because some of the stuff is locally sourced from our friends at St. Julian's Winery.
Oh, nice. Okay.
So yeah, go support local. Oh, look out! Here we go.
But if you're like me and you just are not into any of that and you just want coffee or tea,
Coffee
they
and
have
tea works
excellent
great, too.
coffee and tea. not
Yeah.
getting a jab at you or anything.
Hey, every time I go
love
in
their
there,
coffee.
I order the Up North tea and the blueberry, and they put that in special order because I order two and get a large.
Nice.
And you can refill that stuff all day. Just throw hot water in it. It's tea bags.
Oh, there
Like,
you go.
you know.
And it's better for you, right? Supposed to be?
Yeah, because tea makes you pee.
There you go. All right. I can remember that rhyme. All right. So you got some stuff over there.
Apparently, yeah. Let me go back to the split screen here so that way we can...
I gotta keep on looking at the
I
camera
know, right?
straight.
It's so
this
weird,
is
'cause I'm
weird.
like,
I'm trying to turn at
You're
your
normally
look.
over here.
So.
But no, we got a couple of people bouncing in on guests on Twitch here.
Okay.
Roxanne says, hi, Doll Phase, because apparently I was hogging the camera again.
Hey.
And Irish Girl Laughing says, lovely ladies tonight. Hey, gorgeous. They're talking. They want your hat.
Oh, I can tell you where to get it.
Yeah?
I got it from Ducky's Doodads, actually. She makes all of my hats.
Shamelessly
You can
plugging.
look at her on, you can get a hold of her on Facebook. This one is actually called Brainwaves. I think it was 15 or 20, but
Yeah.
I got a source, so.
And Roxanne also chimes in and says, being bald is sexy too, Tony. No hat needed. Thank you. You have no idea how often I have to shave this thing. Like, you'd be surprised how much I save in shampoo and conditioner, but I make up for it with
And razors.
Because, like, one razor, which I kill after one shave of the melon, is $20.
It's expensive.
And I'm just going, this is insane. Like, Walmart, I should take out stock in Gillette because I'm basically paying myself to shave.
You need to go to Dorco.
I tried that.
Didn't work?
That was the Dollar Shave Club, right?
No, it's another. They actually they
There you go.
supply the razors for $1 shave.
Really?
Yeah.
No
where I always
kidding.
get mine is Dorco.
So let's get to our guest,
Yeah,
ladies and gentlemen.
Let's talk.
Speaking of Dorco.
Yeah, right. Let's introduce our guest, ladies and gentlemen. It is Pastor Randy from Colwood. Say hi, Randy. You're on the screen.
I knew that was going to happen. I knew it. Well,
Apparently,
welcome.
my head's shiny, dolphin smooth beauty is expensive. Tell me about it. I love our fans on
gosh.
Twitch. They're literally chiming in and saying, hey, all of this stuff. So, yeah, Twitch is
Much
fun.
love to you guys.
Yeah, beauty is expensive.
It is.
It is.
It's
Beauty is
very
pain.
expensive.
So-
You have the unibrow. You have to take care of that.
Right?
You know.
Legit. Let's go to the triple shot.
Oh, okay.
What is
oh,
this? Why is that there?
I don't know.
That should not be there.
I
There
just
we
work here.
go. All right, there we go. Now we got the triple shot of all of us.
So welcome to the show.
Good to be here.
I've met you a handful of times when I've gone out to Colwood,
Sure.
and I've always had a great time every time I've went. You do an excellent job. I like how everything is set up. You feel comfortable. I don't feel like I have to be completely dressed up in a suit or dress every weekend, which I think is really cool. And then now I've watched a lot more with it being online. Have you found that have you found that to be more people are joining in now?
Yeah, we've got, we don't know the number just because it's really hard to measure.
Yeah.
But we've had a lot of people that have continued to be online and watch the service. And so we wish we could have a good number to figure out who those people were.
Right.
But we actually have folks, too, that are not even a part of the Callwood Church that are tuning in. So it's been kind of interesting to see how it goes.
Yeah, I've shared actually with a couple of my family members. I was like, well, I'm watching this weekend or Sunday, so if you want to join in, it's at this time. And then I'd share them the link, and they'd be all over, the state and everything. So I thought that was kind of an interesting, change from everything that's been going on. But after that, you guys are you still having people come in, or is that kind of slowed
we're
down?
still open.
Still open, okay.
Still cautious, socially distancing, but we're also online.
Mm-hmm.
And we've had, we're probably at about 30, at most 40% of our normal worship attendance.
Okay.
So, and that's pretty normal for churches our size.
Yeah. Yeah, if it's a good sized church.
It's always the
For
second
sure.
service that fills out big.
Yeah.
Yeah, the 9 o'clock service, it's our early service. I always say that's the service for the people that have something they want to do in the afternoon.
Right.
Right. Yeah, usually I'm just like, okay, I'm gonna sleep in because that's what I'm gonna do in the afternoon,
Right.
and then after that, it's all from
People
there.
going to the lake, I'm going to go to 9 o'clock.
Yeah, yeah. That's funny because there's a song that my fiance listens to. He's big into fishing, and I can't remember what country singer it is. Then in the pew,
Right.
so that's kind of interesting. Or thinking about fishing while he's at church or something.
Sure.
So yeah, and I was like, yeah, that sounds like you. So, but that's interesting though. So after this, when everybody starts to come back in, are you still going to continue doing online to reach to more people, or that's awesome?
Yep. Yeah, we're going to continue to do that. We have found that it remains to be a really good way of getting connected to people, allowing them to see the service. Before we would record the service and then it would be out on our app on Monday.
Oh,
But
yeah.
now it's direct. People can watch it, and even through the day, if they miss the service, they can pull it up, watch it, and so it doesn't allow for the face-to-face, which
Yeah.
still is important.
Of course.
But it allows us to at least allow people to be a part of the service
Yeah.
at their convenience.
Yeah, it takes a lot, like some creativity with everything that's happened. I seen that you would have the band members come in and you guys would do, the separate, social distancing, but still do the band at the beginning, and then you would come on and do, your sermon and everything. And I just thought it takes, you got to get creative with stuff, and you guys still continue to do that, and that's awesome.
Yeah, we're trying to do as much as we can to keep things very safe. And so far, we've been okay. I think we're doing good, but I'm not knock on wood.
Yeah.
Hopefully, I don't jinx myself. So.
Right. Yep.
I think it's an absolute blast, the fact that you and I get to hang out because which one is it? There we go.
There
All
we
right.
go.
I will get these buttons down because here's the funny part about it is I did all of these like an hour before the show. So I plugged all this stuff in, got in all of the graphics and everything else. And then of course Heather gets here and like the one shot that was supposed to be Chris and I didn't have any of that stuff in there, like the scrolling text and the fancy word and font and I'm like, really? Everything else looked great except for this one. The one you're looking at right now. And I'm going, come on!
All right, my dad's saying he's having a hard time hearing Randy.
Yeah, I just bumped him up a
Okay.
little bit.
All right.
I can do that actually a little bit more here. But no, one of the things that I thoroughly enjoy about being able to play in the band there is when Randy's on drums.
Uh-huh.
Because we have so much fun because he's a drummer and I'm a bass player. So
You get in that rhythm.
well, bass is not
Yeah.
my main instrument, but it's
Right.
always great because we're joking back and forth. It's like, okay, I'm going to lock into your right foot because that's what my right hand's doing. And he's like, well, I'm not too sure about this one part. I'm like, we'll both be lost together. Nobody will know any
Exactly.
different. So
There you go. There we go. Now I can hear him good.
Yeah, we've had a few times where got through a song and I would look at you with like, I hope you weren't following me.
That's funny.
I kind of have to, though. Although I do have to say, and I don't know if Byron listened to the last Sunday I was there, which I think was last Sunday, or was it 2 Sundays ago now?
That we played together?
Yeah.
It would have been a week ago Sunday.
Okay. So yeah, the last song of the last set that we did for, I think it was the 10 o'clock service.
Yep.
We all came back up on stage, and you were doing all the stuff, and like as soon as you sat down and started playing, and like he changed it just a little bit when we got to the bridge part, and you did this fill, and I was looking at you, and I'm like, oh crap, he's doing a fill. And then I came out of it, and you did like this other half fill, because I think you like, I don't know, dropped a beat or something, but it was perfect. And I looked at you, I'm like, yeah, we meant to do that.
All right.
Act like you know what you're doing.
Oh yeah, that's funny.
Yeah, it was so much fun, because we got done and we're putting all this stuff away, and I looked at Byron, and I'm like, hey dude, check that fill out that Randy and I connected on. And he's like, I heard that was pretty good. And I'm like, we don't know what we're doing.
We just make it look good. That's funny.
Yeah,
So are
right.
you still recording for each weekend?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Both services get recorded. Both services are live streamed. And so if you watch the 9 o'clock service, you'll see often you won't see many heads like in the audience.
Yeah.
But it's a smaller service.
Yeah.
And then the second service, 10:45, is considerably bigger.
Oh yeah. Well, and it was really weird seeing how the seats got, because like you guys took a whole row out between each row. So I'm standing there for sound check and rehearsal, and I'm going, something doesn't look right. What's going on here? And here comes Craig. And he's like, you like what I've done with the place? And I'm going, it's too open, man. we need more chairs.
Well, at one time we would keep a row of chairs in and we would block it off so you couldn't sit there.
Yeah.
Well, and that was kind of a bumper zone,
Yeah.
and which was good. Well, then when we had Christmas Eve service, we needed to add chairs, but of course, adding chairs makes it difficult for room.
Of course.
So they took those rows out, and we actually had a pretty decent size group show up, and it's a good thing we did that. But now the funny thing I've noticed is that bumper row being taken out would keep people apart, and by taking them out, now people actually don't social distance anymore. So we've created a problem.
Right.
So I've always wondered, what is one of the biggest things that might be like one of the biggest challenges with being pastor of a church? Like, what is one of the things that you find kind of more of a challenge?
That's a good question. I mean, it falls into different categories. There's certainly things that are on the job, occupational hazards, you might call them. Those are one thing. There's always the issue of your home life and making sure that your home life remains safe and protected. Because people always have these notions of how a pastor and his wife and his family are supposed to, how they're supposed to act or look or react or whatever. And I said a long time ago, because the pastor's wife especially was always that person that people looked at with a particular light. And I remember telling a group one time, it's like, listen, especially in the hiring process, because a lot of times they would ask, like, what does your wife do? Does she play piano? Does she play an instrument? Does she sing?
Yeah.
Does she teach Sunday school? And I would look at him and I'd say, let's remember you're hiring me, not her.
Right.
And so that has been an issue that you sometimes have to deal with, where you protect your home. I've got 3 daughters, 2 boys, and and protecting them as well
absolutely.
has been a challenge. But there's always things too. There's on the job issues that you deal with, and sometimes you in a church you're dealing with people that they have issues.
Yeah.
And as we all do.
Right.
So, you got to sometimes not take to heart the issues. You got to not take to heart the issues that they have with you. I've had people get up and walk out on me when I was preaching.
Yeah.
I've had the whole gamut. So you can't take those things personally, and you just gotta remember what you're doing it for. You remember your calling, and you just gotta love on people and do the best you can.
And that's so hard when you look at the landscape right now where everyone is completely divided.
Oh yeah.
I mean, you can't even give something as simple as compassion of going, can I just give you a hug? And they're like,
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
It's so different.
yeah. It's if you give me a hug, that's got to be fake.
Right.
So no, legitimately, I would like to just
Yeah.
show you that you're appreciated,
Right.
you're loved, you're valued, and it's an interesting environment that we live in for
Yeah.
sure, and so I don't know what the answer is, but I just tell everybody all the time, you can't go wrong with loving on people.
Right.
So just keep loving them, and if they don't want it, okay, tough.
Yeah.
I'm still gonna love them.
Yeah.
Right.
That's been one of the interesting things because I am definitely a hugger. I've always been that way. So for me, like I'd see certain people and they'd be like, yeah, we're not hugging or we're not doing, and I respect that, but I'm also like, after they leave, I'm like, I just wanted a hug from my friend. It's just the weirdest thing, to have that feeling and be like, but
Well,
you can't take it personal, like you said. You really
Yeah.
can't because everybody's doing their different thing.
When this pandemic started, the people that had the most difficult time were the huggers,
Yeah.
because they needed that social interaction, and because it was gone, they were struggling to just feel like whole and emotionally whole.
well, yeah. I mean, what's the psychology behind a hug? Is it something like there's a couple of thousand different neurons that are activated in your brain when you give somebody a hug that has nothing to do with words,
Right.
and like the science and the psychology behind it all is just crazy. That's how we're hardwired to experience one another.
Sure.
Is through a not the way that the world perverts things, but a non-perverted embrace that is meant to be pure and innocent and being there for each other. I mean, it's
Right.
insane.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's and even today, the pandemic has caused us to ask permission for hugs.
Yeah.
Hey, Heather, can I give you a hug?
Right.
Absolutely not. You can't touch me.
Right.
That, and sometimes you might get that answer, but
Yeah.
more often than not, you're safe to say, "Hey, can I give you a hug?" And generally, people will say, "Yeah." And
Right.
so we've had to go through a lot of hoops and ladders. It's been mentally exhausting
Yeah.
to lead a church right now.
Oh, I imagine. Yeah, I can only imagine.
You guys, I literally have so much love and respect for what you guys are doing. The fact that you're in the trenches and literally in the front lines, navigating this stuff every day, because you see it firsthand. People being so divided, of going, I'm wearing a mask, I'm not wearing a mask, I'm Republican, Democrat, whatever. All of that crap doesn't matter. Of asking the simple questions of, hey, you ate? You okay?
Yep.
Have you slept? I mean, you're a little rancid. You need to take a shower here because, you need to do some laundry. Like, let's get down to the real questions here. And it's always interesting because you're that guy of, hey, how you doing?
Yeah.
Every single time.
Yeah, I think that's a simple phrase that we have kind of put to the sidelines a little bit, and we need to bring it back onto the main field, which is just that simple question: are you doing okay? And
Right.
and I tell people all the time, there are certain people in your life that you probably don't want to ask that to. Are you doing okay? And you need to know they're probably going to tell you.
Yeah.
And if you're not ready for that, then
Right.
don't ask them.
Yeah.
But there's times where you just gotta watch people. This whole thing has really caused me to watch people more, and to ask that question: "You doing okay?"
Yeah.
And I do that a lot, even with pastors. That's been in my heartbeat, is to just really watch pastors, and especially during this season, and just to ask that simple question: "You doing okay?" Because a lot of them aren't.
Yeah.
I think you're going to see that there's going to be a mass of individuals in the ministry that are going to back away. They're
Yeah.
going to get out. So it's the statistic of individuals that leave ministry every year is staggering.
Oh,
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, it's just mind blowing.
Well, it's right up there with the stressful jobs of being a lawyer and a pastor. I mean, they're two of the, and some of the statistics that I've read is scary of the suicide rate.
Right.
Just this year alone,
Right.
dealing with pastors of going, I can't deal with this anymore. People are so just invasive in what they're trying to go through and do. And I get it. You know, when you have widespread panic and fear, that's crazy. And, you know, you're just like, look, are you okay?
Yeah, it's a lot. I mean, I can't even begin to imagine what the amount of mental illness and different things, the fear, like you said, you
Yeah.
know, it's hard sometimes to have the faith over fear with so much stuff going on because, you know, of course it started with the pandemic and now it feels like our world's so divided.
Yeah.
And that's even harder I can't even imagine being a pastor right now and trying to help everybody through this because it's like, I wouldn't know the answers, you know, other than just try to keep on having the faith, but that only goes so far, you know, to keep on saying that to people.
Well, I mean, you know, I don't know if there's much connections with Catholicism, but I mean, you guys are pretty good at doing like exorcisms and stuff like that.
Oh my
right?
gosh.
Power of Christ compels you. Like, just
More
go
s-
straight Old Testament, man.
Right.
More so on my little boys.
Oh gosh. Yeah. So how long have you been a pastor? How long have you been doing this for?
26 years and full time, and 30 years completely.
Oh wow.
And so yeah, it's been a long time.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem like 26 years, but yeah, a lot of things. I could tell you story after story of ministry and people, and you know, whenever you deal with people,
Yeah.
it's gonna be interesting.
It's going to be very colorful.
Very colorful.
Yeah. I imagine that it's always weird.
Yeah.
It's gotta be.
Oh.
It's so many walks of life.
I had a situation a few years back where my secretary came to me and said, "Hey, we've got a guy that just walked in our doors. He's not right,
Yeah.
and something's wrong." And one of the guys from the church was just sitting with him and talking. And so I said, "All right, I'll go out and see what's up." So I went out, sat down with this gentleman, and said, I got up. I kind of realized what was going on. I went back to the secretary and I said, "You need to call an ambulance and the police.
Oh wow.
This guy's coming off a meth high."
Oh.
And so I told the gentleman from our church that was sitting with him, "Hey, I'll take care of this." And I invited this other gentleman into my office.
Right.
And sat down. "Can I get you some coffee? Can I get you some water?"
Yeah.
And he looked out my window and he just said, "I can see the demon hordes outside your window." And I thought, this guy is nuts.
Yeah.
And so it was kind of interesting. I just sat there with him and talked with him and tried to just reason with him and just have a simple conversation until the ambulance got there.
Of
Yeah.
course.
And finally they did. And,
Yeah.
And he said he would like to go to the hospital. But I mean, that's probably not the weirdest thing that's happened to
Oh,
me,
I can imagine.
but it's up there.
Yeah. Oh, I can't imagine even how to deal, you know, to help with that situation. Did you ever hear anything back from him? Did
No,
he?
no, I never
No.
heard a thing, and it was just basically one of those moments when you're kind of, you know, it's that moment when you say they don't teach you how to handle this in
Yeah.
seminary,
Right.
you know, but you just try your best to make sure that everybody's safe, and my secretary was like a complete, you know, she didn't know what was going on,
Yeah.
and I said, "Don't worry, we've got this," and he's not violent, he's coming off a high, and
Yeah.
so we need to get him some help.
Wow. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Well, and it's always fun when you go through and give like a little bit of context for some of the stuff that you've dealt with in your messages, and then you get into the message, and it's always funny when you hear some of the stuff that you talked about of dealing. And this is not, you know, picking on one group, but like some of the real religious folk that come at you and they're like, "Well, you know what I would have done." And I mean, I remember you talking about the one lady that was just giving you hellfire and brimstone at one of the churches that you were a pastor at. And you're just like, "Look, I'm not here to be your friend. I'm here to give you the word." And it was great because, wow, And you said she just stormed off. You love you in the name of Jesus.
Yeah. Yeah,
I think
there's
that's the best way.
pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember one time I was having a conversation with another individual, and I knew somebody was over my shoulder, and I finally turned around because they just stood there
Yeah.
and listened in on my conversation, but I know that there was a little bit of like angst. So I finally turned around and I said, "Hey, what's going on?" And she had these books in her hand, and we were selling the books for a small group that we were starting, and she looked at me and she said, "What do you want me to do with these books?" You can imagine there's a lot of thoughts going through my head.
Right.
And I said, "Well, put them back at the table. We're selling them." "Well, nobody's sitting at the table." "Well, pick them up and take them to a welcome center and somebody will sell them there." So it's just, it's stuff like that you deal with. And it's like, you don't want to tell somebody you can cram it up your nose.
But you think
But
it
you think it,
sometimes,
yeah, honestly.
right?
How do you navigate that when your knee jerk reaction is to tell them to go take a long walk on a short pier?
Yeah.
How do you do that? How do you navigate
Is it
that?
like, not today,
'Cause
Satan?
That's your knee jerk reaction of, man, this person again.
Yeah. I think a lot of it just goes back to that phrase, you got to pick and choose what hill you want to die on.
Yeah, right.
So I've just learned that over the years.
Yeah.
I've always had a sense of, I think, diplomacy with grace.
Right.
I would call it direct grace or direct diplomacy, meaning I'm not going to embarrass you. I'm not going to say mean things to you, but I will be direct.
Right.
And so I've had moments where, I remember one time in a men's group, a guy really embarrassed me in front of everybody.
Really?
And I wanted to just embarrass him back.
Call him out, yeah.
Call him out. But I didn't, and I waited until I could deal with him one-to-one. And
Yeah.
I told him, I said, "You know what? What you said about me in front of these people was inappropriate
Right.
and mean-spirited." And he said, "Well, do I need to apologize?" And I said, "If you think you have to ask whether you need to apologize, I don't want your apology."
Right.
Wow.
So yeah, it has moments when when you're dealing with human nature, and,
Yeah.
and even people that would call themselves people of grace, people of faith,
Yeah.
they're still human. They're still gonna say things that sometimes are a part of their walk. That
Yeah.
they're slowly learning to kind of let things fall off of their life that are a lot of baggage that they've dealt with their entire life. And you have to keep that in mind. Sometimes you're not dealing with necessarily a mean-spirited person as much as you're dealing with a person that's got baggage.
Yeah.
Lots
And
of
they
growth.
don't lots of growth, and they don't know how to deal with that baggage.
Well, how are you going to travel anywhere without baggage, right?
Right.
Yeah, I'd like to leave mine at the baggage check. Just leave it there and be like, all right, I'm good.
Moving on.
Moving on. Moving on.
Well, let's backtrack a little bit, Randy, and take us down the road of yesterday. What? And I know you've told this story, and we've had conversations about this several times over. But what I guess possessed you to take up the sword and shield of being a pastor all those years ago?
Well, it's actually a kind of an interesting story. I was in college. I was actually taking classes. I started in college in political science. Didn't do well on my first political science exam and realized this isn't for me. So I went home and I went into business, and then I didn't like that, and then I went into travel and tourism because I like to travel, and I thought, oh, this will be fun.
Yeah.
I can go all over the place. And that just wasn't really scratching where I itch, I guess you'd say.
Yeah.
And so I remember one night, my church growing up used to have Wednesday night prayer meeting. And when I say prayer meeting, I mean people knelt at their chairs and they prayed. And I hate to say this, but there were always certain individuals you hoped didn't pray because they wouldn't stop. And I'm a young
Right.
kid, and it's like, so I'm kneeling at this chair. I still remember it's that beige colored steel case chair,
Oh, yeah.
old, and,
Yeah.
and we're all kneeling at the chair, and I'm sitting there twiddling my thumbs thinking, You
This
know
guy
what?
says father one more time, like God forgot who his name
Throw
was.
this chair at him.
Right.
Right.
WWF insurance.
Yeah. So I'm just kneeling there, and I actually kind of prayed myself because I was so frustrated.
Right.
And I finally just said, Lord, what do you want to do with my life? And then there was nothing. And then all of a sudden, and I don't know how the Lord speaks. I think he speaks to people in different ways. I really think for me, there's often been what I would call a nudging.
Yeah.
But in this case, it wasn't necessarily a nudging. It was an audible, inaudible voice. And it literally was like somebody took a 2x4 and cracked me over the skull and said, I want you in the ministry. I literally sat up on my knees
Right.
and looked around the room, thinking to myself,
Oh, yeah.
what did I just hear?
Right.
Am I crazy? Am I
Yeah.
good?
I'm crazy.
Ministry was never on the horizon, never on my compass, nothing.
Right.
And I just sat up looking around like, what was that?
Yeah.
And I remember getting in the back seat of my mom and dad's 1978 Malibu, four-door Malibu, ugliest car you ever saw. And we're driving out of the parking lot, and I said, I think the Lord just called me into ministry. And my mom was furious and turned around and looked at me, and she goes, please no. And I said, Mom, I'm telling you, I just literally felt like the Lord called me into ministry. And she goes, do you know what they do to ministers?
Right.
And I said, I have no idea. I said, but I said, I just felt this calling. And my mom was so disappointed. Grew up in the church. My mom's a godly woman, but she just was so disappointed that's the direction I was going to go. And she's not that way today. But,
Right.
that's where it began. And so I went to my pastor and I started to ask questions like, what's next? What do I do? I said, I just feel like this is the direction I'm supposed to go. So went to school, finished undergraduate, graduate school, went into I started ministering in churches and yeah, that just one thing led to the next, to the next, to the next. And here I am. So
So when you were growing up, did you go to just regular public school, or did you go to like a Christian academy school or anything
Public
like
school.
that? Just public school.
Yep.
I was just wondering if that was part of, getting into the ministry too, or because I know I've had friends that have gone to like Christian academy and they're like, I don't want nothing to do
yeah.
with it at all, and that's sad.
Yeah.
That's sad.
I grew up in a Christian home. My sister and I were both adopted into the same home. But strangely enough, out of my mom and dad's house, there were 3 young men that went into ministry.
Oh, wow.
Two of the other young men. My dad was a volunteer youth pastor, and we've always been in the church. I've said at times I think I might have been conceived in a church. I used to say that. But it's just one of those things where it's like
So it truly was a religious experience.
Yeah. But we grew up in the church, so we were there Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night. We always went to church, but there was something I think about my folks that had this that it allowed the sense of calling to become more real.
Yeah.
And so I think that had a lot to do with it. But again, it wasn't on my horizon. Never once did I think, maybe I'll try this.
It's not something you just kind of.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
In fact, today I actually now I'm the North District for our denomination. I'm the North District licensing person. That when somebody's going into ministry, they have to get licensed. Well, I meet with them, and often one of my first questions is tell me about your calling.
Right.
And they do, and then they'll look at me like, well, why are you asking that? And asking that question, I'll say, if there's anything else you can do,
Go do it.
go do it. Run.
That's a lot of pressure.
It is.
I
It
can't
is.
imagine.
And if you're trying to do, ministry without a calling,
Yeah.
it's not ministry.
No.
You're going to be barking up the wrong tree.
Yeah.
Because it will not be the place that you'll want to be.
Oh
And I
yeah.
imagine there's a lot of stigma that goes into it. Like people just expect you to be just this perfect person that never messes up, never says a bad word, never anything. And
Who's
that's
above
gotta be hard.
reproach? Come on.
No, I mean I can't believe like having to. I mean, yeah, you're in front of everybody, but I'm sure even as a pastor, you slip up and sometimes may say a bad word or something happens. Obviously, the chair thing or whatever. But I feel like there's a big stigma because I kind of felt that way too. And then I was like, after meeting Jason, I'm like, oh,
God, Jason
okay.
was so much fun.
So it's interesting to get that, take on you. That do you have that a lot where people are just like, oh, you shouldn't act like that?
It's I think it probably hits more my family
Okay.
than it has me.
Right.
And so, yeah, as a pastor, you generally get a little protective of your family.
Mm-hmm.
course.
But again, yeah, you try to remind people that they're human as well.
Mm-hmm.
I'm human. Of course, in the ministry today, as you look across the headlines, obviously ministers are being scrutinized quite frequently,
Of course.
and sometimes they're making dumb mistakes. And I do believe that as ministers, there is a level of lifestyle that we are called to live.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's an example
Right.
to other people, even though I'd say most people that watch us probably don't want to live like us. They do appreciate the fact that there are people out there that live, to a level of righteousness that they can appreciate. And so I think it's still important, but yeah, there are people that can hold you to
Oh, I'm sure.
a different standard.
Yeah.
We just got Irish Girl Laughing says, what a great epiphany story. Thank you for sharing. So there's that.
Nice. I got a couple things over here on YouTube as well. Lexi White saying, hey, y'all. Adam says, how's it going? Sounding great. Just joining in.
Finally, Adam,
Yeah.
you're fired. You're supposed to be the first one there.
Well, it's either my dad is my biggest fan or him. I'm actually going to turn this so I can look at you guys.
All right, there you go.
Oh, right in front of the microphone. That's probably why that was like that. Oh, that's very close up. Hi,
Yeah,
guys.
there you
All
go.
right. Perfect. So, yeah, I don't know. That's something that I found interesting is probably when that pressure people always fine tooth combing you and being like, oh, you got to be the standard. You got to do this,
Yeah.
Which I kind of understand because on this show, it's different. Did I mess up my camera?
Nope, you're
Okay, on this show, it's different for me because I feel a little bit more relaxed. I'm not perfect. I do have, my moments where I say some colorful words and whatnot. But then when I go on Survivor Girl, it's completely different. It's all about, bringing on guests that talk about their survivor stories and different things like that. And it's just a different vein. But I'm also like, but I'm human. This is me. I'm not going to hide that.
good. Yeah.
So it's interesting. That's why I was kind of thinking that when you first got here too. It's like, okay, that's got to be something.
Apparently,
Something hard to do.
Irish Girl Laughing is your biggest fans are over here.
Oh.
So
All right.
you have fans now.
Oh.
Well, see, and here's the real eluding question. So all of this, I mean, don't get me wrong. Being a pastor comes with its perks, and preaching from a pulpit is amazing. But the real pressing questions on all of this is, when did you decide to become a drummer?
I was wondering that too, actually. Good call.
To the chagrin of my mom.
Nice wording there, Andy.
Yeah. When I was young, I don't even remember when the first time was that I saw a drummer, but there was just this magnetism.
Oh yeah.
Like I could not take my eyes off the drummer. And I remember going home and I went to my dad. My dad was a woodworker, and I said, "Could you make me some drumsticks?" So he, of course, had these long, square drumsticks that he gave me, and I'd put my mom's pillows on the couch and beat the living snot out of them. Dust flying everywhere. I know nobody wants to hear that. My pillows don't have dust. But she actually appreciated it, I'm sure. So I started doing that. My mom and dad bought me a snare drum, but I wanted it on the kit.
Of course.
And so when I was in 7th, 8th grade, there was actually a drum kit in the band room at the junior high school that I went to.
Nice.
And I saw it, and I said, I'm joining the band. So I was in 8th grade, I joined the band, but what I didn't realize is the amount of time I was going to be able to be on the kit was very minimal.
Of course.
Of course, the amount of time I'm behind a marching band drum, which I hated, was much, much more. And eventually, I think my sophomore year, I got out of the band. I just couldn't handle it anymore. And then played in a couple bands in college, just picking up some songs for particular festivals and things. But didn't really play much
Yeah.
until probably in my 30s. I finally bought my first drum set, and I played. It was an electronic kit because I brought it to the church so we could play at the church I was serving. And
Right.
I had a phenomenal piano player at that church, and her and I really just, I thought, played well together. And then we added a bass player, so I just started playing again and playing, and then left. When I left that church and ended up at another church, same thing. Now at that point, I already had my own kit.
Right.
But this church, same thing. Bought an electronic kit, introduced drums to the church. The devil's instrument, as some would say.
She's not the devil, Mama.
Yeah. So started playing there and played there for like 8 years, and then moved to Colwood. And our worship guy then, I told him, I said, hey, I play, and if at any point you need some help, just let me know. And I don't know what it was, probably not even a month after I was there, he walked in my office one day and said, hey, you want to try out for the worship team? And I said, yeah. So when do you need me? He goes, well, let's go in the sanctuary and let's just jam together.
Right.
Went in there, he got his guitar, started playing. He said, what do you know? And I said, just tell me what you want to play and I'll figure it out.
Right.
So he started playing, and I started playing with him and played through a couple songs, and he kind of sat there and nodded his head and
Right.
said, okay, can you play Sunday? Well, I see what you're doing. So said you were looking for a drummer.
Yeah.
And he was a little antsy trying to find somebody. But
I think I remember that because I don't know if I was playing bass or I was playing guitar, but I want to say it was one of the first times that you come and played with the praise and worship group, and I was like, wait a minute, and he plays drums because you're sitting by the kit and you're trying to adjust some stuff, and I'm like, hey, what's up? And you're like, what's up? It's like, let's do this. All right.
That's pretty cool.
Now, what is your preferred genre that you like to play? I mean, obviously, praise and worship is one of them, but I mean, what do you like to just get into that gets the juices flowing for you being a drummer?
I don't have a particular style of music that I really like. I'm a big jazz nut.
Like big band stuff? Or?
No, not as much big band. More smooth jazz. A
Okay.
little bit of maybe big band, but it depends on who it is.
Right, like Count Basie, Duke Ellington,
A
something
little
like
bit of that.
Okay.
Yep. Some more contemporary stuff that I love to listen to. Chris Bodie.
Yeah.
Rick Braun. I love a lot of that stuff.
Some Quincy Jones.
Yep. And then
love me some Quincy.
Yeah, but I'm still a classic rock kind of guy as well. I love listening to that. I love listening to, not a big pop guy, but that's the stuff I kind of cut my teeth on.
Yeah.
And so even today I just have this drummer's brain. Even my wife said to me one day, we were driving down the road, the music was on, and she looked at me and she goes, "Are you clicking your teeth?" And I said, "Yeah." She goes, "Why are you clicking your teeth?" I said, "I'm not clicking my teeth. I'm playing the drums."
Yeah.
And she's like, "What?" And I said, "It's just I can't stop. I just click my
You have
teeth
that
to the
beat.
beat of the song."
Yeah.
Mhm.
Oh yeah.
And I have a certain click, certain ways.
Oh,
that
yeah.
This is the snare drum. This is the kick drum.
Same thing with guitar.
Yeah, it's weird. Musicians are weird. They really are.
Tell me about it.
I've always said drummers fall in that category. That's not really the weird musician, and not really the sane adult. They're somewhere in the middle.
I don't think you ever grow up as a musician because you get to play.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, that. How many times have we literally been on stage, see each other, and go, "Hey," and
We
then
get
like
to
we're just
play.
goofing off
Right.
for the rest of the time, counting to 4.
Right. Right. Yeah. It's
So fun.
And locking into this stuff that we're doing, like I so loved last Sunday when we got to play, because one of the things that I've been studying a lot is Jaco Pastorius, that one of the most incredible bass players ever to exist, and watching how, and like Billy Sheehan and Les Claypool and Fleet, like I will never ever be even remotely close to as good as these guys are.
right.
But to be able to lock in and literally emulate everything you're doing on the drums with the bass, to create a rhythm section
Yeah.
is so much fun because I'm like, oh, I did the fill like he did. Didn't make any sense, but I'm hoping it translated and sounded good.
Yeah. Just kind of syncing. I mean, literally, it's
Yeah.
like two brains syncing together, and it's quite amazing.
So, oh, sorry.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
So
You're
is that different for you guys with playing a different genre and then getting into the praise and worship stuff? Do you feel like it's still that same drive, or is it a different feeling when you're playing that particular music?
I think a lot like praise and worship is really what you decide you want to make of it.
Mm-hmm.
There's some songs I've listened to some of the big groups that play, and I listen to their drummers, and it's like, oh my goodness, it's like these guys are playing rhythms that
Yeah,
it's impossible.
Right.
Well, then I realize it's
Right.
more than one percussionist.
of course.
So, but when you get up there, I've always said this, that particular songs, like when we played, about a week ago together,
Yeah.
particular songs, if the drummer can lock in on it, he can push that energy.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's kind of me. It's like if I just sense the energy. In fact, one guy came up to me a week ago and just smiling after service, and he goes, "Man," he goes, that was so much fun." And I said, "Yeah," and I said, "I was getting a little excited up there." And he goes, "You could tell."
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, okay, oops, I didn't mean to. I'm not the type of person, I don't want to draw attention to myself.
Right.
I don't want people to move from worship to the drummer
Yeah.
or the guitarist or the piano player. I want people to worship,
Yeah.
but sometimes you can get your instrumentalist going and they can push it and it just pulls people into worship. And I find that amazing.
That's what's so hard about me of literally playing on multiple stages over my whole musical career. I can't help but not move.
Yeah.
And especially playing bass where you got to get funky with it.
Yeah.
And I mean, the dynamics that we do all of the time when we're playing together, when you're on drums and I'm on bass, and I'm just watching you and I'm like, okay, he's going to do that fill and he's going to come out of that and he's going to bring it right down and I got to copy what he's doing. And then just like it happens. And when I nail it, I'm like, yes. And when I screw it up, I'm like, it wasn't me. It was the other bass player guy.
Yeah.
I didn't do it. I'm not playing, I swear.
Yeah.
But dynamically, and you know exactly what I'm talking about because there's been several times where we've riffed off one another, just hinting at stuff like the building parts or the subtle parts of what was that? What was the song that we did? It was the third song in the set where it's got the bridge part where it comes in and it's just like acoustic and synth and ambiance. And Ben was doing the lead.
Jesus Messiah.
No,
think.
it was
that one.
It was the one where your body breathes and God, I'm so horrible at remembering this stuff. But like, and then when you come back through the verse or the bridge the second time, just like everybody comes in and you're doing this incredible dynamic fill, and I'm like, yeah, getting into it. And it was just so cool because, like, I think that was one of the first times that I saw you just really, like, push in to getting the fill dynamic. And then when you came back in, it was almost like a reverse fill where you just like, bah, 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 and then you went into the hi-hat and the snare again. And I'm just locking into it because we're coming around to the second line of the second time and we're really building it. And I was just like, yes, this is great. This is so much fun. And then just stop and we all hold it. And I look over at you, and you're like, and then Byron counts with his foot. It was so much fun. But yeah, watching that dynamic and just really sinking in as only musicians that have done it for a minute because they catch that synchronicity of how you vibe. I mean, and I think, most of the time, only musicians know how to do that are somewhat seasoned to go, I've never met you, you've never met me. We can both count to 4 and go.
Yeah.
And the next thing you know, you're off and running with somebody for, a 2.5 hour rehearsal or whatever it is,
Yeah. Drummers have always, it's always fun to listen to other drummers. And it's fun to listen to them because every drummer has a unique quality about them, unique style. And, there's times you can't break away from that, but it's always fun to listen and learn somebody else's style. strangely enough, not to bring it back to the pulpit, but it's the same with preaching.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's a style. You figure out your style, and
Yeah.
and you know, I co-lead with a female, and you know, Kelly, you know, as she's gotten up there, I've told her over and over again, got to find your style. You know, find what works for you, and find things from other people that you like, and pick up those morsels and take them,
Yeah.
and run with them, and then figure out how that style resonates with people.
Right.
Because you know, that's the thing, that as communicators, you can't sit there and say, well, this is the way that I like to communicate, because you can say that, but if they're not listening,
Yeah.
then you're barking up the wrong tree. So every church I've been in, I've always had to shift and adapt my style
Right.
to the group that I was speaking to. I had to do that immensely at Callwood,
Yeah.
because they were used to Jason. You
Yeah.
know,
Jason was kind of a force to be reckoned with.
he was a little bit on the academic side,
Yeah.
and he had a style, and he knew how he wanted to work with that style.
Yeah.
But you know, there's times where people will lock in on that, and there's times where people don't, and so you've got to figure out, how do I speak to the largest, greatest percentage of this audience so that they can, you know, hang on to what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And it's funny after that, because a lot of people will walk out and be like, he was speaking to me. No, he was speaking to me. No, he was speaking to me. So you got to feel like, okay, I'm doing the right thing when you have that kind of happen, and that everybody's feeling that, you know, throughout.
Can't tell you how many times I have walked off the platform, first service especially, and if Kelly's there, there's been times I've walked off the platform, gone towards my office, and she'd say, how did you feel about that? And I'd say, that was a bunch of gibberish. And then I'd go out in the foyer, and a number of people would come up and say, thanks, you were speaking to me. And I'd sit there like, what did you hear?
Oh yeah.
Right.
But you know, it's just the way the Spirit of Christ just moves sometimes, and you know, through words that maybe you don't understand, but somebody else does.
I can completely relate to that, because just gigging and playing shows and being on tour, it's one of those things where, you know, you walk off stage and you're just like, that's it, I quit, I'm never doing this again. And you know, you go to an after party or whatever, you know, you're sitting at the bar having a couple of drinks after the show, and people are like, dude, that was amazing. And I'm like, were you
Same
listening?
show? Yeah.
And like, some of the shows that you've done and knocked it out of the park that you felt like, they're just like, well, you know, you could have done better. And I'm like, were you not there?
Yeah.
Like, hello, I was there. And speaking of Kelly, like, I'm calling Kelly out, because she's the only one I've not been able to pin down to get on this show. Like, I have you, I have Byron. So if you could like put a bug in Kelly's ear and be like, hey, just say yes to Tony and come on the show. It's fun.
Well, it's interesting too that you brought her up, because I was thinking about that, and I didn't know, like, you know, about bringing that up, because that's different.
Yeah.
You know, that's new to have a female in the church that's leading, you know, helping with the service.
Yeah.
Did you have a lot of bumps with that, or, you know?
When I originally came to Callwood, it was actually a tri-leadership, and how do I say this in a gentle way? It didn't work. And so we had to quickly transition. And the transition was actually going to be one of two things. Either, Randy, you're going to be the lead, or Randy, you're going to co-lead with Kelly. And so that was presented to me, and they asked me, they said, what do you want to do? And I said, I have no problem co-leading with Kelly at all. I said, let's start there. So, you know, and Kelly had gone through quite a few seasons of just, I would call it a lot of repression, you know, because she's a woman. And so, you know, I sat down and talked with her, and I said, I'm good doing this if you're good doing this, but if we do this, you've got to do this, which was, you've got to get your licensing and ordination and your graduate work and all that stuff done. I said, I'll be your biggest supporter, but you got to do this.
Of course.
And of course, I'm the licensing guy for the North District. So,
Right.
you know, if you don't do this, I'm going to have egg on my face.
Yeah.
So she said, and actually to this day, I still can't believe. She just looked at me and she said, okay. And I said, "You're good with getting your graduate degree?" "Yep."
Wow.
And jumped in. She'll be done this fall.
Wow.
Nice.
Yeah. So then we started co-teaching together, and it was a lot of trial and error.
Yeah.
We tried different things, and we talked to people, and hey, how did that look? And first few times we tried it, people were like, "Yeah, this." One time I would go up on the platform and speak, and then I'd get done, and she'd come up from the audience and speak and finish.
Yeah.
And people were like, "No, that's just not working." And I finally said, "You know what? Let's try this." And we started tag teaming. We both stayed up on the platform, and then after some time, there's something about her and I. She's kind of like a younger sister, and there's some bantering that her and I do.
That's always fun watching that on stage.
It is. And she told me, she goes, "Well, I don't really know if I like that bantering, because I don't want to say something where it might embarrass you or you embarrass me."
Right.
And I was like, "Trust me, you're not going to embarrass me."
Right.
So all of a sudden, we started doing this back and forth, and I would develop the skeleton of the message, and then we would decide who's doing what, and she would take her section, I would take mine, and they always seemed to just lock in together.
Yeah.
And then we would let the bantering sometimes go, and sometimes I would tell her, "I'm going to say something to you during the message. I'm just not going to tell you what it is."
Right.
So she'd look at me with panic, and it's like, "What are you going to say to me?" And it's like, "Don't worry, just go with me."
Yeah.
And there's been some times where we've said things completely accidental,
Yeah.
and people just lose it. Like,
I think that's one of the most enjoyable times of a service is when you guys do something completely off script that's totally organic.
yeah,
And the reaction of the other person's like, and then you hurry up and recover, and then you say something that you thought about saying, but it came out wrong. And that's where everybody's just cracking up laughing. And of course, it's that, do we laugh? Do we laugh? And then of course, the person that was just like, you got me. That's good. You can
And then
laugh.
it sends it all through.
Oh yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's so much fun to watch the banter back and forth. And I mean, it's hilarious because a lot of the times, like, Randy was talking about developing the skeleton and so on and so forth. And it's great watching the banter back and forth because Randy becomes the butt of most of the jokes. And it's like, wait a minute.
it's like I'm supposed to be the comedian.
Right. That's not what we discussed.
You're like the straight guy, and she's the one that just kind of sets him up and knocks him down. And
I always tease her. It's like, "I'm Donnie, you're Marie."
Right.
And,
Nice.
so I remember just recently, she hadn't been up there in a while, and she got up and she was sharing, and she said, "Oh man, it's been a while since I've been up here." And I said, "Yeah, it's been kind of nice." And what I meant was a compliment to her, but
Yeah.
people lost it.
Yeah.
And she looked at me, and I was like, I really meant that as a compliment. And she goes, "You're in a lot of trouble." And I said, "What's new?" So we just both have just a real sense of same philosophy of ministry.
Yeah.
And she's got a real coachable spirit. She's had a lot of years in ministry, not many in leads.
Yeah.
But she wants to do her best, and she wants to reach people well, and she's got a real heart, and she really speaks well
Mhm.
to an audience that I can't reach.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the beauty of it. And
That was one of the things is watching your guys' stride when, she would come up and you guys would kind of back and forth a little bit. And there were several times after the church service before all this stuff happened, and I'm like, "Did you coach her on that?" And you're like, "I had nothing to do with it." I'm like, she's really picking up on this stuff fast
Yeah.
and applying it because, watching her with some of the youth stuff, because, my kids were in the younger church
Yeah.
that she was teaching before all of this stuff. And it was really interesting to kind of see the bits and pieces that I know, you did help her with and whatnot. But I mean, a lot of it, and not taking away from Kelly, a lot of it she just developed through trial and error.
Yeah.
And just hitting the ground running. And it was like, wow, that was really cool. And you're like, go let her know that. And I'm like, if I could track her down,
Yeah.
because she just like Houdinis, man. You're just talking to her like, "Hey, Kelly, how's it going?" turn to talk to somebody for 2 seconds and she's gone.
Yeah, she has a real. I mean, she spent so many years in kids ministries and sharing with children and that type of thing, which she's amazing at.
Yeah.
And then to move into a different environment, different audience. And I remember, there were times when I would sit with her and I'd say, and ask permission. But I would tell her, it's like, I think I can give you some pointers, but do you want to hear them?
Right.
And she'd say, yes, please. And I remember one time I said to her, I said, obviously you're a woman. I said, the audience you're going to have the most difficult time with is
Right.
the men.
Of course.
And I said, so here's what I'm going to tell you. When you share a truth, I said, you embellish and you say what could be said in a sentence, you say it in a paragraph or two.
Right.
I said, to a guy, you got to say it straight.
Yep.
And I said, and you got to say it with grit.
Yeah.
And she's like, well, what do you mean? I said, you've got to take your finger and you got to stick it up their nose. And don't give them a choice.
No.
Don't say, this or this and give them a choice. You've got to tell them the way it is. And you've got to have a sense of authority.
Yeah.
And I said, if you do that, I said, guys will start to listen to you.
Yeah.
And so about a week ago, I was on vacation, or 2 weeks ago. And so I was at home watching the simulcast. And all of a sudden, she did a combination punch.
Yeah.
And I'm like, at home, I'm getting my phone out, and I'm typing in, preach, girl, go
Right.
get him.
Yeah.
And she just, belted him. And then she told me later, when I got to the office that next week, I said, good night. I said, that was amazing. And she
Yeah.
goes, oh, you don't know how scared I was coming off the platform. She goes, I felt like a mom that just came unglued on her kids. And I thought, I've just offended people. I said, you didn't offend anybody. And if you did, it was done well.
Exactly.
I said, nice job.
Yeah.
And so, I've had people come up to me that have said how much she has just grown and developed and come up with a style. And I said, she's just worked her tail off. And it's really starting, I think, to mesh a lot for the two of us in that regard.
Kelly's definitely becoming a force to be reckoned with. And it's so funny because off of the platform, off of the stage, from away from behind the pulpit, she's so soft-spoken and just very, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't even know the word I'm looking for, but just very feminine and dainty and quiet and timid. And then when she takes a lot of that character and her characteristics on the platform and the stage with her. But then there's certain times where she's just preaching hellfire and brimstone, and I'm like, get it, girl.
Yeah.
Yes, bring that. And, you and I have talked about it a few different times. I'm like, dude, whatever y'all are doing, in your offices, keep doing that because she's really knocking it out of the park with that conviction. You can feel it in her words that she's bringing.
Yep. Yeah, she's grown tremendously, and again, already had a lot of talent.
Yeah.
She just shifted a lot of that talent into a completely different zone.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, so, somebody asked me one time, because this, like you said, Heather, that this is not normal. It's not, a guy and a girl co-leading together. There are churches doing it, but there's very few.
Mm-hmm.
And, and some have asked me, are you enjoying it? And I said, yeah, I'm having a blast. And then, and then they would say, well, I've had actually a good friend of mine has attempted to kind of lean that direction and try the co-teaching, male, female. And I've told him, I said, this may not be for everybody. You can't, this isn't something where you can just say, oh, Randy and Kelly are doing it. I got to try that. This may not be something that fits your personality.
Right.
And, for a guy, you've got to be able to be okay with yourself.
Right.
And for a girl, you've got to be able, or a woman, you got to be able to say, I'm ready to elevate. But the thing for her that is really great is she doesn't come in with a chip on her shoulder.
No.
And that's the beauty of it.
Yeah.
She comes in and she's just a servant heart. But if she had a chip on her shoulder, it would make it all the more difficult. But she doesn't.
that's one of the things that I thoroughly enjoy about talking with Kelly. And as long as I've known her, she's always had that, how can I serve better mentality, or how can I help, be better today?
Yeah.
And it really comes out when you have the ability to track her down and sit and have a conversation. I'm telling you, she's so hard to get to do this. Like, I'm not making this up. I will literally go up and down the hallway to find Byron or to find Randy, because no luck finding Kelly ever.
No.
Because one of them are in the office, and it's like, oh yeah, the other one's sure to follow, and we'll be sitting there chit-chatting in the hallway or whatever it is. But to find Kelly, just now, she's...
Well, there's gotta be some kind of a different energy though after preaching up there in front of all of those people. Like for me, I'd be like, okay, I got a little bit of anxiety now. There's a little bit of come down after, did I do okay? Did I do right? Do you still feel that even after doing these, or are you just like, all right, I got this?
It's years ago, a pastor that I worked under said that preaching a sermon is very close to working a 40-hour week.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was younger, church I served in Ohio, we did 2 services. I would go up, I would play the drums, I would preach, then go back and play the drums, which I do now, but I did it every week.
Right.
And I remember as I got older going home, and it's like, why am I so tired?
Mm-hmm.
And I got to take a nap.
Yeah.
And even now I'll go home at times and tell my wife, it's like, I just need to lay down for about 30 minutes. I don't know why. And then it's like, well, you dummy, you just ran a marathon.
Yeah.
And so, it's exhausting. There's a come down that, you kind of move away from. It's funny. A lot of times when I get in my vehicle to go home, I need to put in some sort of music that's up tempo.
Right.
That's got a little bit of grit to it as well.
Right.
I don't know why, but it's I don't know if it's that celebration,
right,
or if it's just something that kind of lift the tiredness.
Throw in some Van Halen or some Led Zeppelin or something,
Yeah.
Something up, yeah.
Yeah. But it's weird. I've done that almost every week. Just pop something in that just gives me a boost. Yeah.
That makes sense. I mean, music is definitely something that can always put, no matter who you're talking to, it's a universal language.
Yeah.
There's always something. I've met a few people that don't like music, and I'm just like, I don't think I can even. Really.
You don't need that kind of.
I don't understand that. Like,
Yeah.
I couldn't go a day without music.
Yeah.
So I can understand that because it feeds so many different areas of your life, your soul, your moods. I mean, there's always a different song for,
Absolutely.
So.
Yep.
I can imagine. That's usually my thing. That was my big thing on the way to work. Just put something on, keep moving. 9 to 5 the other day before I went for a job interview. I was like, all right, Dolly let's do this. Yeah.
I haven't heard that.
Oh yeah, I haven't either. But I was just like, I love her. I just gotta do this. So that boost, no matter what it is.
What do you say? What is it you say about Stevie Nicks? She's your spirit animal.
Yeah, she is.
Dolly Parton is my spirit animal. I mean, I'm gonna go for the blonde wig, and
sorry, Stevie, but yeah,
that's not gonna work out.
She's kind of moving into that too. Yeah, inspiring. Though.
Yes, absolutely.
Definitely.
No, I totally get that. What you were just talking about being, drained and coming home. Because I mean, we show up for sound check and rehearsal at 7:30, 7:45.
Yep.
When everybody decides to show up and we can all play.
Right.
And but that's 2 hours before the service even starts.
Yeah.
And you're just like, okay. And then now that we're doing 2 services, and it was funny because when we took the stage, the second set that we were doing, and I walk over to you and I'm like, okay, Randy, I know this is your first service you're doing this. This is a blues riff and B. Watch me for the changes and try and keep up. And you're like, how do you have that memorized?
I actually served, or I played drums for a church down near Toledo. We had 3 services.
That's
we
fun.
would meet at, I think we would get there at 7:30 or 7, I forget what.
Yeah.
We would play a service. Then the band would go back to the kitchen, and there was a group of people that would make breakfast for us.
Nice.
We'd go back, have breakfast, and then we'd go close the service. and then we would do it again.
Yeah.
We'd play, and then we'd go back to the kitchen. Well, when I came on board, they told me, they said, oh, by the way, in between second and third service, we have donuts, and it's the drummer's job to bring the donuts.
Oh.
I was like, really? So I brought donuts.
Right.
So sure enough, we'd go back to the kitchen. There'd be donuts and coffee, and
Right.
then we go back up, close the second service, and do the whole thing a third time.
Yeah.
And the funny thing is we never had anybody that complained.
Right.
They all just were such a family, and they loved doing it, and and it was amazing. It was a lot of fun.
Find that passion
Yeah.
and bring it all together. That's really cool.
Yeah.
It's got to be a really awesome feeling, that energy from it too. That's got to be a boost as well.
I get
feeling all that.
A lot of times, it's for me, trying to lock in on the music is one thing, but then there's that moment. In fact, I had to learn to do this, because when you're up front on a musical instrument,
Yeah.
you have to learn to shift worship,
Yep.
because it's not like you're in the audience
No.
participating. You're doing it.
Yeah.
And so there was this aspect of worship that I had to completely shift. Well, what I learned to do was I could look out and I could target certain people
Mm-hmm.
and watch them.
Yeah.
And their response was worship to me. So that's what I did. I really started looking at people and looking out and watching. And even like when you get up there and you start moving and
Yeah.
somebody else starts moving, to a drummer, that means a lot, because it's something that the drummer can do to push. And when
Right.
people are just feeling like they can, maybe it's dancing or maybe it's something, that to me is what entices worship.
I've had it where it's like the waterworks on certain songs. I'm just like, why am I crying? Is anybody looking at me right now? Like, what's happening? It's just like this big. I mean, I'm emotional anyway, but I'm just like, what? Nobody told me there would be tears. What is this? Yeah. So, and even sometimes when you would be up there and preaching too, I'm just like, I just feel like I just got something handed to me. It's like, but yeah, it's interesting.
Hey, is this your ass? Here you go.
Right? You
Here's
didn't know that would happen today.
I remember years ago, I had a young couple in my church. They had 3 daughters, and she came that morning. He wasn't there, and they
Right.
worked with our youth. And I didn't, I figured, okay, he's not here. But during my message, he was sobbing.
Yeah.
And so after service, I pulled her aside and I said, "What's going on?"
Right.
And she said, her and her husband the night before had gone to a wedding reception, and he got drunk.
Right.
And he was so overcome with like disappointment in himself
Right.
as a youth leader that he just didn't come. Well, the funny thing is that afternoon we were having a baptismal service and they were getting baptized together. And she said, "I don't think he's coming this afternoon." And I said, "I'll tell you what, before you guys make that decision, come to my house an hour before everything gets started
Right.
so we can sit down and chat." So we did. He came with his wife, and I remember we went out. We had a trailer in my side yard. We went out and sat at the dining room table in my trailer, and he's sobbing. He said, "I can't do this." And I said, "Why?" And he goes, "I feel like I let those students down, even though they didn't know what happened."
Right.
He said, "In my mind, I've let those students down." And I said, "So what you're telling me is you're the first person that's ever made a mistake like this?" And he stopped. And he goes, "No." I said, "So what you're telling me is that God can't forgive this? It's unforgivable?"
Right.
"No. I don't understand why you're not doing this." I said, "May I make a suggestion?" He goes, "Sure." I said, "How about the two of you go out and get in the pool, share with your church family what happened,
Right.
and ask your church family, I just need to know that you'll forgive me. I can't handle this."
Right.
And so he went out there with his wife, locked hands. I was in the pool with them, and he told them, he said, "Last night, this happened." And he said, "I'm really ashamed of what I did because I lead your kids."
Right.
And he said, "I'm asking you to forgive me."
Right.
Whole group of people surrounding the pool start yelling, like, "Get in there. Let's do this.
Wow.
We love you. Get in the pool. We're going to get this over with."
Right.
Just this huge support
Right.
for him. And the look on his face was just priceless because he realized that this is what a real church family is supposed to be like.
Mm-hmm.
And so we baptized him, came up, and people just hugged him and loved on him. And so I'll never forget that. It was
That's
just
awesome.
a huge testimony
Yeah.
regarding the church.
That's very cool. Speaking of making mistakes, most of the time while I'm moving on stage, I have to confess, it's because I'm tripping over my cords because they have me tethered to the the in-ear monitors, and then of course I've got the 25-foot bass cable,
Yeah.
so I can move, and like the yappy dog that gets to the end of his leash,
Yeah.
but it somehow manages to get wound around my feet. So when I'm trying to move and I'm looking at you going, I didn't just stumble, I swear.
At least you didn't throw your drumsticks into the audience.
Yeet.
And good night.
Yes. I've done that.
Yeah. So I know right now is a little bit harder because everybody's not coming in or whatever, or things are changed up. But what are some of the services that Colwood does offer?
Outside of worship service, we've got several small groups that are more topic oriented. We've got a grief share group. We've got a marriage group. We've got a lot of small groups that are what we call grow groups.
Those are fun.
They are, and we spend a lot of time. Since I've been there, I've really been pushing the idea of grow groups, which is getting people rooted in the scriptures.
Yeah.
I said your church becomes thriving when you get people rooted in the scriptures. And so we've got right now, at one point we had probably, 6, 7 groups that all targeted the same thing. So those, that's big. Tomorrow, the health department called us. We got to do all these vaccinations, these vaccines for the COVID epidemic. And could we use your building? Absolutely.
Right.
So tomorrow, about 1,000 people are going to go through our building and get this vaccine. And they just said we couldn't do this.
Right.
Because there's nowhere in this community that we could do this without the space that you have and then still social distance. So tomorrow you're going to see an assembly line.
Right.
Going through our building, getting the vaccine. So, and that's the one thing that we've really tried to change, because a few years back, the church became very closed.
Yeah.
Doors were closed, locked. We weren't open to the community. Well, when I came here, I said enough of that.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to open our doors and we're going to let this place be somewhere that the community can come to. So we actually have walkers that come up during the week.
Yeah.
And they walk the perimeter of our building inside.
Yeah.
And we've mapped it out, like the distance.
That's
so they know
cool.
exactly where they're going. And we had 2 people came the other night. We know it's late. We know you're going to be closing your doors. Could we just walk through? It's like, yeah, go ahead. Somebody will be here. So, yeah, we've got that. We've got a karate group that comes. We got cheerleaders that come. We got a group that wants to play soccer.
Yeah.
So some farmers that want to play soccer. But yeah, we've always been this, at least I have. I've always said this: see what the need is that's in front of you and develop something to meet the need. Mm-hmm. So we don't just do ministry because we want to be actively doing ministry. We want to do something that reaches people at a particular place that they are, like Grief Share.
Right.
And, so that's really what's been going on.
Speaking of that, we got Crispy Bacon saying hello, and he said, speak of mistakes, I am one. Why would you say that, man?
Oh, jeez.
Like, legit, you're one of the coolest dudes we have on as our listeners.
And Shelby's chiming in saying hi, everyone. Sorry, it took me a minute to get there. But yeah, that was just something that I was interested in, of what was available through, the church community and everything. And then I had another question before we wrap up. At what time do you separate and be okay with being like, okay, I need time to myself? I can imagine that it's a constant thing. Have you ever felt like when you say, okay, I need my moment, like any kind of like guilt or anything with doing that, or how are those feelings for you?
There, in the ministry, you definitely feel like that you're needed.
Mm-hmm.
But I found, for me personally, not every minister is this way, but I would say most ministers are not far from this. The importance of rest is at the forefront.
It's absolute.
Absolute. You know, and I never knew this until years ago. My girls were young, and a guy that I actually worked for, he owns or started Pastor's R&R. And I asked him about it. I said, hey, I understand that you do these things where pastors can go down to Florida for a couple weeks. And he goes, when do you want to go? And I was like, I don't know. I just was trying to get information. He goes, we require that you go down for 2 weeks. So I said, well, let me give you some dates. And he goes, okay, give me the dates. I'll sign you up.
Right.
So he signs me up. He says, go down. You're going to go to my house and stay there for 2 weeks. And so we did. We drove down, me and my girls and the family, and we went down there, and we drive up to this monstrous house. And I'm like, there's no way. So we drive in. I said, okay, girls. I said, if this is the place we're supposed to go, there's going to be a key under the mat.
Right.
So I lifted the mat, and sure enough, there's a key.
Right.
I open the door to the garage. I walk in. Here's an alarm system.
Right.
And I'm like, oh, you got to be kidding. This alarm system's going to go off.
Right.
And so I'm rushing now, and the girls are right next to me. And I said, girls, we might be in the wrong house. There's no way.
Right.
This was a large house.
Yeah.
And so I said, if this is the house we're supposed to be in, the refrigerator will have eggs, milk, orange juice, bread, and a few items in the fridge, and that's it. So we ran to the kitchen, opened the fridge, now thinking we could be in somebody else's house.
Yeah.
Opened the fridge, and sure enough, those were the things in there.
Wow.
This place was immaculate. Had an indoor pool, had a jacuzzi, had all this stuff.
Nice.
And my girls were like flipping out. We're going to stay here for 2 weeks? I said, I guess so. So we were there. Then the neighbor comes over that day, knocks on the door. And I said, hey, and I forget, his name was Richard. And he came in and he said, I do all the business stuff for Forrest, who was the owner.
Right.
And Forrest called and said to me, he said, make sure that they get these. And so he hands me an envelope. And I said, what's this? He goes, Forrest wants you to have these. Inside the envelope was 5 4-day passes to the Disney parks.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
And I'm like, are you sure about this? He goes, Forrest wanted you to have those.
Right.
Wow.
A week had passed by, and Richard came back to the house, and he said, Forrest doesn't normally do this, but he wanted me to give this to you, and he hands me another envelope. And I said, what now? He said, just, that's for you guys.
Right.
He leaves, and I open it up, and inside was $500.
Oh, wow.
Holy.
And that was just him. And I think that for me, that's why I have such a heart for ministers and rest.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And the importance of getting away, because that was the first time I'd ever taken a 2-week vacation.
Yeah.
And it took me a week to stop being a minister
Yeah.
and to just be Randy.
Right.
And so, yeah, to answer that in a long sort of way,
Right.
it's sometimes for pastors, you've got to know how to get away, how to just break free from your occupation and find not just physical rest, but emotional and spiritual rest.
Absolutely.
Because you're no good to anybody if you're just overwhelmed.
Yep.
I think that's key too with all the stuff that goes on behind the scenes. I mean, most people have the illusion that, oh well, he's just a pastor. He gets up there, and if he plays drums, he plays drums or whatever.
Like, that's it.
Or he sits in the
That's
pulpit.
all.
That's what he does all day.
Well, he works an hour a week. So.
Right. Why is he tired? You know,
No.
and seeing that, because I've been, in and out of the whole musician circles and whatnot of playing in 15 million different kinds of church settings and multiple ethnicities and this, that, and the other thing. But seeing the stuff that goes on through the course of the week because of rehearsal times. And I'm going, I even asked you after, I think it was like 6 months or whatever. I'm like, dude, you gonna take a vacation? And you're like, I can't right now. And I'm like, well, at least take the rest of the day off.
Right.
And you're like, maybe. But I mean, just talk about that before we close out some of this, just some of the stuff that goes on behind the scenes. I mean, not in detail, but like some of the day-to-days that you guys deal with.
Well, certainly there's a lot of planning that goes on. Sometimes too much planning for a Sunday morning.
Right.
But, there's a lot of, if you want your church to function on all cylinders, you got a lot of people that you got to do coaching with and training with so that you're not getting overwhelmed with
Right.
the areas of ministry that we want to develop. I've always said this. I said, I'm not going to start a ministry until I have somebody that can lead the ministry.
Right.
And a lot of that happens when we empower and equip people through discipleship. And so that's what we really focus our attention on. But a typical week is a lot of planning. There's, on occasion, there will be some counsel that has to take place, a lot of study, you know, and trying to prepare for Sunday. But, you know, on top of that, it's just a lot of putting the pieces together behind the scenes.
Yeah.
And making sure that as a staff, we're all on the same page and dealing sometimes with weird hardships in people's lives and who's going to call this person, who wants to, you know, help this person. So, yeah, there's a lot that goes on.
Jason talked a little bit about that because he was on the show before, and he's like, I don't think in any other profession can you have a birth, a death, someone dying of cancer, and then you're basically, you know, giving someone's last will and rights because they've been on life support for 4 months.
Yeah, I can't imagine.
And he's like, then you have to go home and sit down with your family and pretend nothing's bothering you.
Right. And it's hard not to sometimes carry that stuff home.
Right.
You know, if it's somebody you don't know, you know, okay, you're carrying out a service. I mean,
Of
I've
course.
done a lot of funerals for people I never met before. You're carrying out a service, and I do the best I can to make sure that the family thinks that I knew the deceased really, really well.
Right.
And that's important.
Of course.
But, you know, in the ministry, what people don't realize too is you're constantly dealing with your own anxiety.
Right.
You know, are people enjoying the service that I have? Are they enjoying my messages? Are they, you know, and then when you have that handful of people that I think characteristically have a real spirit of a critical spirit, you know, what people don't realize is you carry that home with you.
Yeah.
And, you know, you can't tell your spouse.
Right.
You just got to go home and you got to put on a completely different facade.
Yeah.
And, you know, and at times you can't hide it and your spouse looks at you like, what's going on? It's
know.
like,
Yeah.
What? I mean, let's be honest. You know, the missus that you have she's 10 feet tall and bulletproof. So, I mean, she's a serious force to be reckoned with. And I mean, you've commented about that several different times while she was sitting in the front row laughing at you, going, "Wait till you get home."
Right.
But no, she's an absolute treasure and a very sweet person. But she, you know, she is a force to be reckoned with because she knows the hardships and stuff that you deal with, and seeing how certain people treat you and how other people are just like, whatever, okay, don't
Yeah.
really care.
she was military police trained.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's kind of like you come home. Well, would you like me to take care of this?
Right.
You know, my wife, you know, pulling out, you know, maybe one of her weapons or something. I got this for you.
That's got to be a different dynamic there, you know,
Oh,
being
yeah.
like, oh, where do I stand here? What do I do?
Yeah,
You know,
it's like,
I can
really
imagine.
could imagine you doing that, but I got to stop you.
Yeah.
I don't want to raise 2 boys by myself. So.
Right.
I mean, yeah, but isn't there like a kind of get out of jail free card? I mean, I would like to hear details about her just, you know, messing someone up because they crossed the line with you.
Well,
I mean,
she's never had to step in and protect. But yeah, she can get a little feisty. You know, she's typical. You know, I want to protect my spouse,
of course.
and that's why I don't tell her a lot of stuff because she grew up in a home where her mom would tell her get in the car, like if there was a little bit of an issue with a student in school,
Right.
get in the car, we're going and finding this student.
Right.
And they would.
Right.
We're talking East South Toledo. So
Yeah.
So she's had a little bit of sloughing off of this baggage that she's had to deal with.
Right.
Right.
But yeah, so thankfully I've not had to. She is sweet. She really is. And haven't had to deal with her
Getting in any trouble.
going postal on
Yeah.
Sunday.
Yeah. Oh, well, I guess, you know, we're at that time. I feel like we could continue just keep on talking for even longer. You know, It's been
Yes.
great having you on the show.
Thanks.
You know, I have so many other questions that I could ask, but
Would you come
know,
back at a later date?
Yeah.
Okay.
That'd be
I'd love
awesome.
Sweet.
Yeah, I just keep on thinking of more and more stuff, and I'm just like, I don't know. This is a great conversation. We're glad to have you with us. I guess one thing that I do want to end and ask you on, if right now that somebody is seeking some scripture for what's going on in our world, what would be something that you would suggest to them to read or to, look at?
Oh boy, the only verse that really pops out, and this is probably my favorite verse, Jeremiah 12:5. If and I got to make sure I say it correctly. If you have been running with men and they have wearied you, how will you run with horses? And I love that verse.
Yeah.
As a minister, when you think about the fact that sometimes we just try to keep up with men, when God expects us to run with horses.
Yeah.
And so in fact, Kelly is actually painting this. I got this big frame that I built, and she's painting that on there for my office to
Nice.
remind me, let's stop running with men and start running with horses. So in a period like this, I would tell people sometimes running with horses in this time period, this season, it's not just making it through. It's sometimes the answer to the epidemic is what you can do to spill into the life of somebody else.
Thriving.
Instead of looking for what what can be given to you, let's thrive and see what we can spill and pour into somebody else.
I like that.
That's awesome.
That's something super important to remember, especially at these times. We can get so caught up in our own anxieties, our own fears, our own, we go away from faith and all that stuff. So to hear something like that gives a lot of a different perspective for others, especially right now. So thank you for that.
Sure.
All right. Well, a shout out to a couple of our sponsors before we go.
Yeah.
Hometown Handmade in Emily City, and they've had Stone Cottage Farm join into the store, so
Love
that's
Stone
another
Cottage Farm.
sponsor.
Oh yeah, by
which
the
is
way,
amazing.
I'm gonna pimp them out to
Okay,
Randy, so
all right,
You
all
go
right.
ahead and finish with the
All right,
sponsor.
so Hometown Handmade is in Emily City at 130 East 3rd Street, where everything is handmade by artisans, local artisans. You can stop in and check. If you don't want to come in and shop, you can get
There's
order
more than
picked
one
up
scent, so
on,
go ahead
on
and
curbside
pick a
pickup.
couple of them. You're good.
And Stone Cottage Farm is also there, so you can pick up their soap. It's going fast, though. There's not very many bars left. They are going to be restocking. But there's all kinds of stuff there for you guys. So if you get a chance, take a drive over there, hop online,
that's
and
a
you
good
can look
one.
at all
Okay.
of the stuff that they have to in the store, and you can order that and come pick it up curbside if you prefer.
He grabbed the Forgiven.
Yes,
That stuff's amazing.
it is a very good soap.
So when I need forgiveness,
Yes.
Actually, if you look at the ingredient on all of the soaps, the
I
very
love it.
first ingredient is
love.
right.
Nice.
And they are, fellow Christians, and it's funny because they like pray over everything. And like when you use the soap, it probably sounds a bit new age and whatnot, but like you can legit feel that, love.
Relaxing.
Sure.
Yeah.
And it's amazing because like when they were still open before all the pandemic stuff that was going on, you could go over there and have goat therapy because they would literally take you into the pens where the goats were at. You'd have the goats climbing all over you or whatever.
fun.
So it was great. Like legit, look them up on Facebook, give them a like.
You can
and-
see all the
and share-
videos
yeah.
and different stuff they got going on there, which is really cool.
Oh, yeah.
Stone Cottage Farm Mayville.
Yeah.
They're on Facebook. They have a ton of followers. They have an Etsy store.
Yes.
And you can also check it out at Hometown Handmade.
That will be the only soap you use from here on out.
Okay.
Because it's great for your hair, it's great for your body, it's great for your face.
Yeah, all
And
good stuff.
I mean, look what it's
Natural.
done to my hair.
Yeah, I know.
Right. I don't know if I'd use that as a jump off point for selling it.
Wow,
I don't
really?
think so.
Really?
No. But thank you so much for joining us. We're glad that all of you were able to join us tonight, whether it was on YouTube or Twitch, and also the listeners that are listening at solidstateradio.net. I know you guys only hear our voices, the faces for radio here, whatever it is, but we're glad that you guys join in. We thank you, solidstateradio.net, for re-airing us, and don't forget to check out all of the different shows that they have available on there. So many podcasts, so many different things for everybody. Check it out. I don't know what time that we've been switched to, but if you go onto Facebook, I'm sure you could see the lineup, and I probably should do that as well. But we thank them, and we thank you guys, and thank you, Randy, for joining us. We're
Glad
looking
to.
forward to to seeing you again on the show.
Well, and if you want more of Randy through the course of the week, you can go on the Colwood app because all of the messages are on there. And if you're on the Colwood Facebook page, you can see you live most every Sunday morning, whether you're performing with the band or you're in the pulpit, you know, giving this, thou, these, those, and thou shall nots.
Exactly.
So thanks for coming on the show, Randy. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Punch that like button in the mouth if you like this stuff, because we've got more stuff to come.
We do. We keep
And-
saying that,
Yeah,
but we do. We promise.
we're not done, and we promise we put out a MIA on Chris.
We did.
He was here Monday, and we're like, hey,
We've
we should do
seen
this
him.
live.
He's alive.
Yeah.
He's coming back.
He totally is.
When, I don't know, but he's supposed to be here.
Yeah.
So probably next week, hopefully, or whenever we can wrangle him
Come
back
back
in
to
here,
us, Chris.
he will be coming and join us. It was good to catch up with him and see that he's doing well and that
Yeah.
he is in fact alive. So that's good.
Yeah.
That's good, you guys. So thank you guys for tuning in. We appreciate it. And remember, keep it weird.